I want to weigh in on just a previous point, and then we'll get back to that. Just there is a variance that I don't think we give enough deference to, and that's the changing of language. Things like, you fight like a bitch. When I tell my friend that, when we're horsing around and I beat him and I'm like, you little bitch, I don't think of him as you little girl. I don't think of him as you little female. I think of him as a bitch. Like, the connotation came from female dog and heat, a breeding animal, and it became derogatory towards women. And it still is in so many regards. But then there's these little instances that are starting to grow out. Things like South Park's take on the word fag. The word fag, in some connotations, in a lot of ways, doesn't mean homosexual male anymore. It means you're a fag. Quit whining. Just stop being such a little fag, right? So, is it ambiguous? Yeah, it's a little ambiguous, and there's still connotations there that mean weak or pathetic or whiny. I don't necessarily think that when I call someone a bitch, I have a woman in mind. I don't think that. I've never really told anyone they fight like a girl, except for my wife, who fights like a girl and punches like crazy because I taught her how to fight. And, it's not an insult, it's just a joke. But I don't know. So on that point, I'm sorry if I am, going backwards in time and ruining the flow of the podcast.
No, that's good.
I mean, I think there are little kernels and nuggets of progress that are taking place. Not that derogatory speech is progress, but there are things that we can't discount. We can't discount the fact that I'm not sure how old you guys are. I'm 35. I'm 3 generations removed from my nephews right now. And some of the language they use just doesn't mean to them the same thing it meant to me when I was younger. And the stuff I say now doesn't mean anywhere near what it means to my father, who's 84. And it's just one of those things that we have to kind of allow. Now, female characters, I play female characters in RPGs constantly because they just look better. The armor's better designed. I'm a designer, so I'm one of those rare men who actually understand the difference between chartreuse and melon. All right?
Please don't get me started on armor and female characters, because we'll be here all day.
Oh, it's on. I mean, the thing is, I work around a lot of comic book people. I'm a member of a comic book studio, and then I'm friends with a bunch of comic book guys. So I'm extremely well versed in that waspy waist, boob butt shot that defies physics and anatomy, and it's just one of the things where, that's not my preference.
Your character may also serve as a flotation device.
Yeah, it's not flotation device. It could sure balloons. It's so bony and weird, and there's no skeletal form in there. Realized over-sexualized, and there's stances I personally take on that stuff. I never really got into the Angela character in Spawn, or Power Girl doesn't do it for me. I'm a big fan of Dan Klaus. I love Ghost World. I'm a big fan of characters with depth rather than visual. When it comes to RPGs, I'm a big fan of Dragon Age. I love Mass Effect, and I think the female characters are exceptionally well designed. I think the armor, I prefer to look at women than men for 60 plus hours, and in the 180.
But do you find looking at these women makes you feel appreciative for your character that you're playing? I mean, that's kind of the question. Does that inspire you to look at women and say, wow, look at the awesome things that my character's doing? Or do you look at her and just go, I guess what I'm saying is, does it help you to objectify, if you do, women by saying oh, look at this, really pretty piece of what? Or does it make you go, wow, look at my character Felicia and how she kicks ass? Which do you think?
I think you're putting the cart before the horse, or the horse before. I think you're looking at causation versus correlation, and for me, it depends on how the character's written. I think a strong character is a strong character, and in the case of things like Dragon Age, Mass Effect, Oblivion, the character's plotline is so thick and varied and strong that you can swap out either gender, and they're completely identical storylines, and they're completely adherent to the fiction, yet one has the nuances of female speech and one has the nuances of male speech, and I prefer to listen to a woman talk, walk, move around, than I prefer to watch a guy. I'm also a big fan of, female protagonists in most storylines and most fiction, and that's where eventually we'll get to the point of what I wrote, and how can I be saying these things and also hate women so vitriolically and be such a misogynist. I'm not. That's the point.
Yeah, no one thinks, well, not no one. You're not here because I think you're a misogynist. Let's just say that.
Some of your thing to contribute. About the writing, like I slightly disagree. I mean, I agree for the most part that the writing makes the character, not necessarily just the character design. But I think that there's still the problem with that because, like, okay, so a really good example I was thinking of is, like, I thought of Tally from Mass Effect. Really good writing. Everybody likes Tally. There's nobody I've ever met that was just like, oh, yeah, like, she was a really annoying character. Like, even people that didn't, like, romance her, like, everybody likes Tally. Tally's likable. And she's also got, like, the cute little sister vibe. More than any other character that I can think of. I mean, she's not like Miranda in Mass Effect, where it's like, hey, here's the sex object, this is the toy, you're welcome. So Tally is as safe as it gets, I feel like. Everybody likes her, she's really adorable, really cute. But you will see, like, any pictures of her on the internet or videos of her, like, there's some video that someone made that's like a Taylor Swift music video where the lyrics are Tally lyrics, and it's literally the most pat-on-the-head adorable thing I've ever seen, but people are still like, yeah, that ass, in the comments. So, like, even if the writing is really good and people appreciate the character for the writing, that still happens. It still happens.
It isn't going to stop. In fact, we're not going to solve gender issues on this podcast or in our generation, or I would even say in America in our lifetime until our civilization falls. It isn't going to happen. And I'll tell you why. It's because it's going to take a monumental shakeup, much like what happened in Egypt when matriarchal societies then went by the wayside and patriarchal societies took over. I mean, you're battling tens of thousands of years of genetics, unless you believe in the Bible's version of it, then 6,280 years of genetics that, you know, it dictates how we behave with one another. We're men and women, and I don't think that the issue is men and women should behave differently to one another or identical to one another inherently. I think that the issue is, are there laws on the books that say women's roles are diminished and their ability to work is lower, so you should pay them 20% less? The answer is not anymore, and that's good. That's not the winning the war. That's winning a battle towards progress where legally your federal government doesn't keep you in the dark or keep you at bay.
But I think you can look at just our generation and say, you know what, when I was younger, it was like not cool to be gay. And now, you know, if you say something anti-gay and you're on a Ventrilo server, people are going to speak up and say, hey, that's not acceptable. And that is not something that would have happened 10 years ago, you know, even 5 years ago. I think at this point, you can't just say, well, this is something we have to live with. I think you can say, look, there's been progress made in racial issues. There's been progress made in, you know, gender issues as far as, you know, sexuality. I don't see why you can't expect that there will be some progress regarding, you know, female issues as well and the way women are treated or looked at. I think, of course, you know, men and women are different and are always going to be, hopefully, I'm not trying to say we should all be the same. I think we're different as we are. But I still think we can look at each other and treat each other a little better.
You're not wrong. What I'm saying is
that thought crime is not a thing, and it should never be. You can think whatever the hell you like, and when you look at Tally, you think, that ass, good for you. That's your thing. But what matters is what you do. Your actions count. You know, and I mean, the thing is, it's like the story of the girl in the elevator. She did an atheist conference. Yes. She's a feminist. She was in an elevator abroad. It was 4 a.m. She was coming back from the bar, and a guy asked her to his room for coffee. She said no, and that was it. But she was really upset. And to be quite honest, I found it a little ridiculous. In his mind, what was he thinking? He was probably thinking about getting her back to his room, and we'll see.
Thinking I finally got her alone and I was waiting all day to talk to her because I'm shy. That's what I think he was thinking. But
I don't know. I mean, even if in his head he was like, I'm going to bang you, he asked her politely, will you come to my room for coffee? She said no. That was the end of it. And she was so offended that he dared do that to her, that he put her in that horrible position. And it's like, it's not a horrible position. He treated you like... He was very nice, you know, he wanted something, you didn't want to give it to him, and he backed off. He didn't touch her or abuse her or shout at her. He just, I mean, I imagine he was mortified, but it's that kind of thing. You can think whatever you like, and it's your actions that are important, and what we're trying to nurture here is an understanding that it is your actions that are important. Like, just went in my face.
I completely agree with that. I mean,
the other thing too here is that we're not trying to solve all society's problems. We're just trying to make gaming a safer environment for everyone. I just like to point that out too. Sure, there's going to be, people, we can't stop them from thinking, rude or racist or sexist things. We certainly can't stop them from saying them on the internet. But there are ways to moderate those things and make these spaces safe.
Where are the limits? I mean, am I going to go to the house of every 13-year-old kid that's called me a faggot on Xbox Live? Because I don't have that time. I mean, in fact, I don't have enough time in my life to actually go to every child that's ever called me a faggot on Xbox Live, but I have a mute button, and that rules. And that stops that particular immediate issue. Then there's the whole be the change you want to see in the world kind of mantra. I don't call people faggot on Xbox Live, even my friends. I behave in a manner that I'd like to see other people behave in, and when they don't, I'm disappointed and I move on. It's like to sit there and beat my head against the wall or chew tinfoil because someone behaved in a manner that didn't physically come in contact with me, that I was able to actually control whether I wanted to take it in my life or not. Like what are you going to do? When that physical realm is breached, that's game over. Like, now you have the right to, defend yourself physically, whatever you need to do, and that person deserves to be punished in so way.
I think we will address...
Sorry, I was just saying that's bordering really close on a justification for cyberbullying. Like, you can just block the person, ignore it, and it's like sometimes you really can't. And I'm not saying you just justified cyberbullying. Don't you do. I just think that you can't say it's when it reaches the physical realm that it's a problem, because so many people have suffered through interaction they've had online. Oh dear, I'm lagging. But
sorry.
I mean, tell me about it. I just did. I just wrote a vitriolic piece.
Yeah.
And got people's interest, and I spent the last few days on a very active defense, but that didn't stop, phone calls to my cell phone and things people found me, like, you're a woman hater and you're a bigot. And I'm like, how'd you get my number? And they're like, well, I found it. I'm like, okay, cool, awesome, have your say. And I just let them talk, and that's fine. Then there's the emails, then there's the other stuff that, a couple of people in my real life realm know people who were so upset that they passed messages along, and I even got some confrontations. Now, I have a benefit that you guys don't, and most people don't, in that I'm 6'3", 310 pounds, and I'm gigantic. And so when people do that whole, I'm going to find that guy, I'm going to pound him, and then I'm going to see him, and then I'm going to not do that. So that's really something I get to, it's a small benefit. Like, when God rolled me up, he took some pretty good...
I also have to say, though, it's a little bit different in the sense that people are looking at you and they're judging you on what you wrote. Maybe fairly, maybe unfairly. They're saying you're a misogynist, you're a woman hater, or maybe you're just like whatever guys get called, like I'm a wimp, you're a woman, whatever. But they're not looking at you going like, oh, Joe, look at your chest, blah, 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 or oh, Joe, look at... You're not making physical body comments about you.
Oh, actually,
like your person, unless, God, I hope not.
I mean, okay, I live in Atlanta, and this is, God, I hope I don't go off on the wrong tangent here. I live in Atlanta. It's a very, very, very dense homosexual population here, and there is sexual harassment that takes place. To me, it's one of those things where going to the girl in the elevator who has asked for coffee, anyone who finds me attractive, I'm flattered, because, I was an ugly kid. So now it's like one of those things where when people say, man, I have some thoughts about you that are deviant, I'm like, wow, that's pretty awesome. Now let's stop here. But I'm not going to lie, I spent some time in my mind thinking, that's pretty cool. I'm not interested, but somebody found me hot. That's okay. I've had some instances that went way too far, especially at conventions. People are drunk all the time, and I've had, a guy nibble my ear because he convinced me to lean in so he could whisper, and I'm like, hey,
no, without your permission?
That's too much, okay? So what I'm saying is that it's nowhere near equal, all right, but it does happen. So there's these little moments where I can say, no, I can relate to that. Some dude grabbed your ass, all right? That's too far. Guy grabs my wife ass in the bar, and she'll flat knock him out, and it's happened a couple of times. And she has every right in the world, and I don't think any single person in that bar would stop her from doing that. Same thing happens to me. I've had women take those liberties. I can't do that. That's inappropriate, wrong, way overbearing, but it does happen. Same thing with like a homosexual male going and coming on to me, physically touching me, and I'm like, I already have issues with like the physical thing to begin with, but again, how you behave. I think that point is it needs to be driven home in all cases. Every single person has deviant thoughts. All have these crazy jumble of things that happen in our mind. Anyone who pretends that their brain is as orderly as their